In this lesson, we'll continue adding color to the various parts of our skyscraper. Alright, so here we go. In the previous lesson, we started adding in color on these protrusions for our skyscraper. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the face that's behind these protrusions, this face right here. And again, we're going to have to isolate that. So I'm going to come in here and hit the isolation mode button, go inside that masked group there. And you can see here again we have a group of stroked paths. And then we have the shape behind them as well. Similar build as the other shapes that we were working with. So let's go ahead and add a gradient to this. Go ahead and give that a linear gradient. And with this one, I want this to be a little darker. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and grab our gradient tool and draw in the direction of our gradient here. Just sort of like that. And I've started the lightest part of it way up here, so that hopefully that doesn't affect the parts around it that we've added highlights to. So that does appear to be the darkest. Now it does look like, let's go ahead and undo that here. We may have actually been on the wrong shape. Let me just kind of zoom in and see what shape we're working with here. And we'll just go ahead and undo back a few times. There we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and try this again. We'll go grab the shape we want. Looks like we have two copies of there, and it looks like maybe that's left over from building our objects, or our building here. So we'll go ahead and isolate, hopefully, the frontmost object. Choose that panel again that has that gray color applied, and apply our linear gradient. And let's go ahead and draw that in here. Kind of the same direction as we're drawing in our other highlights with our gradients. And there we go. We've got the correct panel that time. And you know, I tell you what might be nice for this shape is if we did something a little different with the windows, the paths that we had inside that. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and go back inside this and take a look at those paths. You can see here right now we have a stroke applied to them. It's very light, light gray color, and it's very small, almost too small. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and maybe increase the size of this. Let's see what 1 point looks like. Let's see what maybe 2 points looks like. And that's about the right size I think I'm looking for here. I may go with a little darker gray. Right now we've got it set to this. It looks like about 20%. Let's go with maybe 30% and see what that looks like. I think that's a little better, but you know, this is actually going to present a problem. Let me go ahead and click out of isolation mode. We've got these nice highlights moving along the window pieces, but these gray pieces that separate these darker windows, they're the same color all the way down. So maybe we could think about doing something on top of those to sort of create some gradation here within those areas. So I tell you what, I'm going to jump back in there, and you know what? I may actually even change that back to the gray we had it. I'm looking here and there's very little contrast in this area and it's not quite light enough. So let's go ahead and isolate that shape again. Make sure we're on the correct shape. There we go. And we'll select the paths. Change first the color. And now I'm going to go behind and I'm going to copy this, this shape that's behind them here. I'm going to go ahead and paste it right in place with a Control F. Let's go ahead and bring that forward a couple times. I'm looking to hide the strokes themselves. It looks like we pasted in some type. Let me try that again here. Let's go ahead and bring that to the front. Do we have the shape? We actually didn't even paste one in here. Let me go ahead and copy that again. And we'll go Edit, Paste in Front, and bring that to the front. There we go. That's what I was looking to do. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to mess with the blending modes here. I'm going to change the opacity a little bit. And maybe even the color. Let's go ahead and change the color of this one as well. Now, have we saved this, this gradient swatch to our swatch panel? It doesn't look like we have, so I'm going to go ahead and drag that up right now so we have that saved. And we'll come back down here, apply our linear gradient again, and I tell you what, let's go ahead and go with a lighter blue here, so we can get a little bit more of those window lines visible. Sort of like that. And I tell you what, let's come back to our transparency panel and let's go ahead and maybe change the blend mode here next. Let's go ahead and set to multiply and see what that does. That's creating a little bit of a subtle gradation in those lines here. I may come in and just undo that, and I tell you what, let's go ahead and tweak this just a little bit more. Let's go ahead and increase the opacity on that to about 75. Let's go ahead and change the gradient again. Let's go ahead and make this blue even lighter. Take that black all the way out of there. Well, that didn't have the effect that I was looking for, so we'll go ahead and undo that change. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and come back in here. Let's get rid of the magenta here, and let's reduce that opacity back down. That was a little bit opaque. Let's go ahead and continue to drop that down just a little bit here. There's going to be a threshold here that I'm looking for, and I think 55 is about it. So let's go ahead and leave that about 55, and let's go ahead and move on. So we've got next these panels right here that face our light source. Let's go ahead and see if we can select all three of these at once. Simply hold down the Shift key and click each one. Let's go in and apply a gradient to these. Let's go in and find our gradient panel here, and let's give it a linear gradient, but we definitely don't want this particular gradient. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and change this dark swatch first. I want this to be a lot lighter than that. So let's go ahead and just bump these sliders down, get rid of the yellow and most of the magenta. Let's go ahead and set it right about there, and maybe we could actually set this one to almost white. Maybe just a couple ticks of cyan in there. Alright, so we'll switch over to our gradient tool next, and we'll change the direction of this gradient here. For this, I'm going to go ahead and change, I think, each one of these separately, just because I want to be able to control each one of these gradient annotators. So let's go ahead and deselect those and come in and click this one. Let's draw that in about like that. That looks pretty good. We'll come in and do the same thing here. And let's do the same thing here. Maybe even rotate this one around just a little. Stretching it out some and backing up so we don't get quite so much white in there. I think that might still have just a hair too much white, so we'll go ahead and back that up even yet some more. Alright. That looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and move over to the front side of our building. I think I'll go ahead and start with these panels on the sides, and I think for these, I want these to be a very similar gradient to the one we were just working with here, except maybe a little duller, maybe not so much blue, maybe a little bit of black in there, and a little bit darker in value. So let's go ahead and select both those by shift-clicking them, give them a linear gradient as well, and let's go ahead and set the direction of this gradient here. And I tell you what, let's come in and give it some color. We'll come in and maybe bump the blue up just a little bit, giving it a little bit of black to dull it out some. And let's come down here and let's give this one a little bit of magenta and black. See how that looks. You know, I'm not really feeling that. I think we still got too much blue in there. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and reduce that even further. We're going to go ahead and grab this one. Let's go ahead and just drop that blue almost out of there. Set it to more of a gray. It's really more of a cool gray. And we'll come down here and do the same with this. Let's drop that magenta out of there as well. Give it a little more black. We could even come in here and see what this would look like as a radial gradient. Let's draw that up from here, putting the focal point up here. Nice big gradient. Let's go ahead and lighten this up some. And let's darken this one down here up some. Really, this is just a matter of tweaking your colors till you get something you're happy with. I won't spend much more time on these two pieces because we do have other things to add color to. I may tweak those in between lessons, but in this lesson we have continued adding color to our skyscraper. So we've got a few parts left, and in the next lesson we'll go ahead and pick up where we're leaving off here, and we'll try and finish the color for our skyscraper.